Good afternoon, we are now live.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vincent Garnier. I'm the Director General of the FTTH Council Europe. We are delighted to welcoming you for this first session of our series of online webinar. The webinar for today is titled Spain's FTTH Wholesale Market, Closing the Digital Gap, and is sponsored by our member Onivia. So we're very happy to see you joining this session. I'll be hosting the discussion. And before I give the floor to the presenter, you can already see on the screen. I would like to walk you through a couple of housekeeping items and context information. For those who are not familiar with the FTTH Council Europe, just a few words. We are an industry association created 20 years ago. Our mission is the promotion of full fiber network as the most effective, future-proof, and sustainable access network technology. So we have 160 members, among them operators like Onivia, but also vendors, investors, consultants. The entire ecosystem is regrouped in our membership. And our activity ranges from advocacy to policymakers to the development of content, studies on technology, market research, investment, as well as organizing events like this online webinar today, but also in-person event like the FTTH conference taking place next year in Amsterdam, or a regional event we recently organized in Croatia. So without further ado, let's move to the following slide, please. And I just want to put in context this series. We are organizing online event with participation from our member nearly every month. And what we want to do is try and educate all stakeholders in the telecom industry about the key challenges and opportunity facing the FTTH industry. Practically, this webinar is recorded. And if you move to the next slide, I'll explain that by signing up for the event, you get the right to receive the slide deck, which will be sent to you, also access to the replays. You will be able to share with your colleagues and watch again this session afterwards. It's possible to ask questions, but you need to do it using the question box, which must appear on the top right of the platform. So don't hesitate to type your question. The panelists will address them at the end of the session. We have safeguarded something like 10-15 minutes to do so. In case they cannot address your question, this question will be forwarded to our partner, and I'm sure they will follow up with you directly. So don't be shy, and let's make it a very interactive session. With that, it's now time to introduce you more in detail to the topic of today. And on the next slide to introduce you also to our speakers. Basically, the topic of today is really to help you understand one of the key dynamics which explains the success of FTTH deployment in Spain, which is one of the most mature markets in terms of coverage, but also adoption of fiber. And Spain, from the beginning, has started with innovative wholesale model for some of their operators. That has created a wholesale market. And the objective of this session is really to go through the specificity of what took place in Spain and what is partly responsible for the successful deployment of fiber in this country. So to discuss that, I have with me Alvaro Vigil Rodriguez, who is EMEA Sales Director at Medux. He comes with 15 years of experience in the telecommunication sector, specializing in business development across the European, Middle East, and Africa region. Next to him is Joaquim Guerrero, director at NAE. He runs the NAE's Telco Prospective Center, and has worked in the telecommunication industry for the past 30 years. And last but not least, Hugo Per is the senior market analyst at Onivia. He has over 10 years experience focusing on strategic and tactical analysis, especially on the wholesale and retail telecom market in Spain and across Europe. So Ugo, I think you're the first one to start the presentation. Over to you. The virtual floor is yours, and have a good session.
Okay, thank you very much, Vincent. And thank you very much also to the FTTH Council for giving us this opportunity to present to you the second wholesale analysis that we've done. Okay, and this one we've focused our analysis on the digital gap that we see in Spain. Okay, how if there is a gap between urban and rural performance regarding FTTH network. Okay. So first of all, how we've done it, no? We will be giving you insights about the Spanish telecom industry, also how the Spanish telecom industry benchmarks comparing to its peers, European peers, okay? How then we will drop down the analysis into the Spanish ecosystem. What players do we have? How are they distributed or characterized depending on the characteristics in the provision of wholesale services? Okay, and then we will finalize using data which has been extracted by Medux, okay, which is a global quality of service solutions, okay, to identify different trends on performance of FTTH networks in both urban and rural areas. Okay. From Onivia, my company, we are a wholesale bitstream provider in Spain, and our position in fiber optic market is to foster competition by providing access to a greater number of local and regional operators. Okay. The way that we will be presenting to you all of this information, okay, first of all, we will start by giving, as mentioned before, a European overview, okay, how Spain compares to its peers. Then we will break down into the Spanish ecosystem. We will then follow into describing the methodology that we've been using. Okay, here I will give the floor to Alvaro Vigil from Medux, who will be explaining how the information is extracted and then how we analyzed it, okay, in order to obtain that data. Following Alvaro, we will give the presentation to Joaquin, director from NAE, okay, to present the data on the rural gap that we see in Spain regarding FTTH, okay? And in the end, hopefully you will still be paying attention. We would like you to highlight the main key takeaways that we've seen throughout this presentation, okay? And as Vincent mentioned, please do not hesitate to use the question box, ask any questions that you may have. We will try to answer some of them at the end of the meeting, but if some are not answered, we will happily get back to you afterwards, okay? Okay, so regarding FTTH coverage, okay, as you see, Spain is at the top of the benchmark comparing to other European countries. Okay, we can see that Spain has nearly achieved, let's say, universal access to FTTH in both urban and rural areas, okay, and especially considering the number of inhabitants, okay, because at the end we have 92% of coverage of households building units in urban areas and 80% of coverage in rural business units, building units or urban or households, sorry. But regarding population or inhabitants, we can see that the numbers, it's really, really high, and we can say that we have nearly universal access to FTTH. This has been achieved thanks to a very aggressive FTTH deployment strategy, okay, which has been led by especially the incumbent Telefonica, but also MasOrange now. And in the last few years, which is something that we'll see throughout the presentation, thanks to wholesale operators like ourselves and some regional and local players which have played a crucial part in closing the digital gap, especially in rural areas. Okay. But Spain is not only a leader in FTTH coverage, okay? We have also succeeded in filling these networks, okay? A huge challenge, and we can see this across other European regions is that it is not only deploying fiber to the home, to every single household, no, but we need to fill them. We need to connect this deployments in order to make them feasible. Okay, and what we see is that in Spain we have managed to do that. We can see to the left-hand side in the graph the FTTH penetration rate, which is basically the number of clients or subscriptions to FTTH compared to the total number of households in Spain, by households referring to a building unit where someone can live despite being empty or filled with someone, with a family. Okay, so we can see that here we have 79% of penetration rate, but also the adoption rate. So it is how many subscriptions do we have over building units passed with fiber. Okay, and here we see that this is nearly close to 90%. So basically every fiber which is deployed, every fiber house which is deployed is covered. Okay, we believe that this is a big challenge that needs to be fulfilled by other European peers. Okay, first of all, obviously to have national coverage, but afterwards try to migrate from other technologies in order to use these FTTH networks, which are much more resilient, and the performance is much better than we can see in other technologies. Okay, the success story that we can see in Spain, okay, basically is that, and we can see this in the next slide, is how we have evolved compared to other European countries regarding the technology wise. No, so 10 years ago, when fiber deployment was starting to occur throughout Europe, in Spain, there was a quick and rapid evolution towards fiber. HFC in Spain was only used by a selected number of operators and in selected regions. Okay, and we never had, like, let's say, a national coverage of HFC networks. So at the time of deciding whether to bet on fiber, or as for example other European countries did, they decided to evolve HFC or even try to evolve XDSL to this best performance. In Spain, we rapidly changed towards FTTH. This has allowed for us to have huge adoption rates, having the majority of our broadband customers on fiber, okay, and having minimal HFC and XDSL connections. As a matter of fact, it was this year that Telefónica, the incumbent, decided to shut off all of its copper central stations, offices, and as of today, there are nearly no XDSL or copper customers in broadband customers in Spain. Okay. So, having set the framework of how Spain performs compared to Europe, it is time to break this down and see, okay, how is the Spanish ecosystem? Okay, at the end, we see that the Spanish ecosystem is a very mature market. Okay, as you've seen, coverage level, adoptions level are close to 100%. Okay, so now it's like, how have we achieved this? No, and for this analysis, we've decided to break down our telco ecosystem into 3 different groups, okay, depending on their approach towards the wholesale solutions. Okay, so at the bottom part, we can see the open access platforms, okay, these are operators which only offer wholesale solutions. They do not provide service towards end customers and clients, let's say. Then we have in the middle vertically integrated ISPs, providers, which these are operators who have both different business units, focus one on only retail, but they also have very strong position towards wholesale solutions. And finally, at the top of this chart, let's say this kind of pyramid, we also have different regional and also national ISPs. Okay, these mainly are focused on retail services, despite having some wholesale agreements between them or amongst other ISPs, but their main focus, let's say, we can say it's ISPs. Okay, so going to the first group, the bottom part, which where Onivia is one of the most relevant open access platforms, if not the most, we can see how these operators, they only offer wholesale services, okay, and they provide their network, okay, they make available their network to all the different vertically integrated providers, operators who desire so, but they also provide service to other ISPs and sometimes even regional ISPs, okay. Here we have like three different types of open access platforms, okay. On the one hand, we have some, let's say, owned by traditional operators, okay. So for example, some vertically integrated companies have their own open access platforms which they use and open to other ISPs but are owned by the vertically integrated ISPs. We also have independent platforms with broad national coverage, okay. This is the case of Onivia, which we are independent broadband open access platform, okay. And then we have some regional and local but also open access platforms which are focused in certain areas of Spain, okay. Here we have, for example, Asteo and Red Aberta, okay. Following, in the middle part, we have here the vertically integrated ISPs, okay. As mentioned before, these are both focused on retail and wholesale businesses, okay. They provide service to absolutely everybody, okay. Here we have the big three ISPs in Spain. So at the end, these operators provide service to both ISPs, other ISPs, regional players, but also they have agreements amongst them, okay. But as I mentioned before, these vertically integrated players, they also use the networks of the open access platforms, okay. So at the end, as you see, as we walk down through this, let's say, pyramid of the Spanish ecosystem, we start to see all the different types of connections that we have. Open access platforms providing service to vertically integrated ISPs, to regional and only retail ISPs. Okay, there's our connections amongst the different vertically integrated ISPs. Okay, and finally, we have at the top part, let's say, these operators or ISPs which are mainly focused on retail. Okay, here, for example, we have different types. Let's say, for example, Digi, which is the fourth national operator and the main challenger in the market. We also have MVNOs, which are focused on retail services, but we also have, and this is a very interesting fact about the Spanish market, that we have up to more than 400 different regional operators. Okay, just to put you in some context, in Spain, there's about nearly 50 million inhabitants, 25 to 30 million building units, but we have, let's say, 400, 500 different regional operators which are active in the market. Okay, so at the end, the possibilities for wholesale players, either pure open access platforms or the wholesale solutions for vertically integrated, can be fed by many different regional and national ISPs. Okay, here we start to see the complex ecosystem that has been formed in Spain. At the end, this complex ecosystem, what has allowed to all of us is to achieve these great numbers and place Spain at the top of the benchmark in terms of coverage, but also adoption of fiber. Okay. So this is a summary. Okay, here we have the what I've been broken down, but for you afterwards to have it here, we can have it all together. And in this slide, which is very interesting, which was developed with our colleagues from NAE, okay, we have managed to, only using what is been publicly admitted or placed on public information, okay, how does all of these ISPs connect between wholesale agreements? Okay, as you can see, all the ISPs are connected between, nearly all are connected to one another. No, depending on the type of operator that you are, you will have one type of agreement or another type of agreement. No, but at the end, what you can see is that there is a very complex but also mature and very well placed wholesale agreement in Spain. Okay, so wholesale agreement framework in Spain. No? So we have been able to identify 4 different types of agreements. No? On the one hand, first of all, we have the NEBA agreement, which is the regulated bitstream access agreement, which, by the way, currently is under review to deregulate it. Okay, at the end, there's a very complex ecosystem, and now the Spanish regulator is studying if the regulation is still needed or not for the incumbent Telefónica. Okay, here you have the gray arrows, which, as you see, they all go towards Telefónica. Then we also have private agreements, which are basically wholesale private agreements between 2 different companies. Okay. We also have fiber sharing agreement, which will be the red line. This is similar to a private agreement, but it is more like a, let's say, mutualization or network sharing agreement. Okay, so it is not like a private agreement per se. It is more like a joint forces or for FTTH deployment. Okay, and finally, we have the infrastructure provider agreement, which is the solution provided mainly by open access platforms. Okay, which basically there will be a wholesale service. Depending on the type of ISP, traffic will be delivered in different places. But for example, this type of solutions is used by different resellers. No, if you can remember from the previous part, there's nearly more than 400 ISPs. Not all of them have their own infrastructure. Some of them are mainly resellers. So basically, they will use different open access platforms. They will use their service in order to provide an internet connection to their customers using the infrastructure, both access, transmission, and sometimes internet access, internet exchange at the data center, to provide internet to the customers. No, so this is a very complex, but at the end, we believe that this very complex ecosystem is what has achieved for us to have this very good performance in fiber. So, thanks to the wholesale model in Spain, okay, FTTH has become the most used fiber solution, as you can see here from data from the Spanish regulator. From the 70 million connections lines that we have in Spain, 15 of them are over FTTH. Okay, this is data from 2023. Data will be updated, and we will see obviously that that number has been increased. Okay, and the number of copper and HFC lines have been delayed. Okay, and to the right hand side, we can see another peculiarity, let's say, of the Spanish market, fiber market. Okay, so we have already talked about the different wholesale solutions that we have, the different agreements that are in place between the different type of operators. But then there's another peculiarity, which is the concept of fiber overbuild that we have in Spain. Okay, obviously there's a very important concept, which is the economic one. Okay, deploying fiber in Spain is not as onerous as it can be in other European countries. Okay, but nonetheless, what you can see here to the right hand side by what we mean by NGA accesses, which we can see there are as of 2023 78 million NGA accesses, or FTTH accesses only, is at the end that there are, in a country with, let's say, between 25 and 30 million building units, there are nearly 80 million FTTH houses deployed. Okay, so this, at the end, what it breaks down is that in urban areas, we may have a ratio of overbuild of 4 networks, for example, for one single household. And in rural areas, we may sometimes have between 1 network or 2 networks overbuilding for one household. Okay, thanks to the pricing of deploying fiber in urban areas the numbers roll out finely, roll out okay. But in rural areas where the cost of deploying is much higher, it is sometimes challenging for the, let's say, the economic business case to have different competing networks. Okay, but uh, at the end, thinking about the final user, okay, this is a very good panorama, no? That they have a broad possibility of accessing high, ultra high download speed access. Okay, they have the possibility, thanks to the different wholesale agreements, to select different providers. Okay, and at the end, this brings social benefits for rural areas. Okay, at the end, as you may know, having a good broadband connection can help not only to bridge the digital gap regarding coverage or broadband connection, but it can also reduce the gap between urban and rural areas for, let's say, social opportunities, economic development opportunities, because at the end, many people can work only with a good fiber connection. So here we have, say, that's some nice colors. At the end, the previous slide that you remember about the nearly 80 million connections or houses deployed. Okay, if we break them down by the different operators, as we can see, first of all, that Telefonica has a nearly full coverage of this whole Spanish territory. Okay, as I mean, Telefonica is and has been one of the most important players in order to provide full coverage. Okay, but now there's been a shift. No, we can see that the others group, okay, which is a sum of different ISPs. Here we can have local, regional, and some national ones. Okay, they are the second group, the most important second group. Okay, so here we can see that thanks that this, let's say, last part of the deployment, okay, has been achieved especially thanks to this, let's say, other groups. Okay, at the end, when fiber deployments go to these very rural and difficult places, in Spain it has been especially thank you to this other ISPs, which have provided the solution. Okay. And finally, from this initial part about the Spanish market, okay, we can see a graph, a very interesting graph, okay, of how the different capex has been evolving. The different investment by the ISPs has been evolving throughout the last years. Okay, at the beginning, obviously, it was Telefonica, Movistar, the operator who was investing the heaviest in telecoms solutions. Okay, but in 2023, we see that these other groups, okay, are the group of operators who are investing the most. Okay, this is a very radical change that for the first time in history, nor the incumbent nor a leader, for example, like MasOrange is right now, okay, is the operator investing the most. As you may know, the Spanish market is in a very turbulent moment. There are many processes, open processes. Okay, we will see how this ends up. But as of today, we can see that the others are gaining momentum in the market. Okay, so now I will give the floor to my colleague Alvaro, who will be talking, explaining about the methodology we've been using. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Hugo. Thank you so much, everybody, to participate on this webinar. At Medox, we are thrilled to participate on this activity, on this webinar, and of course to have contributed with Onivia and I on the execution of this report we are presenting today. If you allow me, I'm going to take a few minutes, no more than 5 minutes, just to frame who we are, who is Medox, and how we supported the analysis we are now reviewing. As Hugo mentioned at the beginning, Medox, we are a global recognized Spanish company that now we are operating in more than 25 countries around the world, and we are working close together with the leading operators and regulators around the globe. Our vision as a company, as an organization, is just to become the global leader on the internet QoE testing and monitoring and network solutions. Having as this vision and very committed to the 2030 agenda, we are committed to fostering a connected and inclusive digital society by providing insights to help the telecom stakeholders just to improve the connectivity and to build resilient infrastructures to bridge to the digital divide. To realize this vision, we have developed and we have proprietary solutions that enable us to provide tools to the stakeholders on the telecom business that empower and enhance network quality and customer experience, leveraging precise real-time data, actionable insights, and advanced analytics. Our QoE and QoS solutions deliver robust, cost-effective testing and monitoring tools and capabilities to ensure networks are future-ready, facilitating the ongoing digital transformation. And how we can do that? At Medox, we focus and we are truly believers that the real customer experience is going to be measured or need to be measured from the perspective of the real users, of the end users. Our solutions actively measure fixed and mobile networks using innovative solutions deploying in real customer environments, real end user devices, and automated measurement systems, what we call probes or robots, to provide the most accurate and realistic representation of the customer experience. This unique approach positions Medox as one of the few vendors capable of delivering comprehensive and end-to-end monitoring solutions independent of the underlying network delivery services. As you can see in the slide we are presenting here, our ecosystem allows to deliver or to activate different use cases, from regulatory compliance until, let's say, in-home performance. There are a lot of use cases we can activate it using the Medox solutions to measure the quality of experience. And now, Hugo, if we go to the next slide, just to explain a little bit the methodology and how we contributed to the report we are now talking about. Now I'm going to explain a little bit the methodology, but the most important part is going to be presented by Joaquin behind me. What we used for this report is just to take the information from our crowdsourcing solution deployed on a large scale way in Spain. Okay, that solution, our crowdsourcing solution, it's a solution that I mentioned at the beginning, is performing active and passive tests just to measure the quality of services and the quality of experience of the end users' devices. And in this case, we took the test performed on the Wi-Fi interfaces behind a FTTH network. Okay. Additional to that, we took information from the speed test latency, but we also have information from another KPIs, variables, or different type of tests. But in this case, we use 7 million of data points that was measured in July, August, and September of 2024. As Hugo mentioned, there is a lot of ISPs in the Spanish ecosystem. Here we could identify more than 700 ISPs, national, regional, and even locally. Okay, even though in a small city or small village in different places, and we covered more than 6,500 municipalities from the 8,000 that are almost in Spain in all the country. Okay. One important thing to mention is that just to understand the way of measuring that. And measuring in an active way allows us to understand very well which is the common performance, and which is the performance perceived by the end users on real devices. We are not talking about, let's say, simulating or taking passive data. We are talking about measuring on an active way end user devices. If we jump to the next one, you go, please. Just to frame what is happening now in Spain. In Spain, the Spanish population, let me jump to the other, now, okay. In Spain, 80% of population live in less than 20% of municipalities, mainly focused on the big cities and metropolitan areas, okay? That means that we need to analyze and take a look at what is happening in those rural areas that sometimes is not the focus on the operators and the deployments and the commercial activities. Just to the audience to explain a little bit about the regulatory situation in Spain, the Spanish regulatory, the CNMC, has the, let's say, the obligation now to every 2 years perform a report comparing the urban and rural areas to analyze if there is some difference on those ecosystems. The 8,100 municipalities in Spain was divided in what is categorized as rural and urban based on a criteria defined by the Ministry of Telecommunications, the Secretary of Digital Telecommunications. That means that one area is considered as rural if the density is below 100 inhabitants per kilometer square, okay? But just to make this report more flexible, we divide the municipalities in 4 categories: urban, semi-urban, rural, and semi-rural, that allow us to have a good picture of what is happening in terms of difference between the performance of the network on those 4 categories. That's the methodology, the use of crowdsourcing solution, performing active testing, and having the municipalities divided with the categorization that the Spanish regulator are, let's say, recommended. Okay, and now it's a pleasure for me just to hand over to Joaquin. That is the most important part. That is the conclusions, the key insights that we have identified in this report.
Okay, thank you very much, Alvaro. Thank you very much, Hugo. Okay, and thank you to all attendees to this webinar. Okay, I am Joaquin Guerrero. I am a director in NIE. Hi, Vincent.
Yeah, Joachim, I just wanted to remind our audience that you still have time to ask questions. Use the chat box. Don't hesitate. I already see quite a few questions coming up, but I just wanted to send a friendly reminder to everyone. We will have time to address these questions, so don't hesitate.
Okay, thank you very much, and please put question on your bar, please. Okay, I'm Joaquin Guerrero. I'm a director in NIE. NIE is a consultancy, 20 years old, in fact, already. We have worked and we have helped to develop this very sophisticated ecosystem Hugo has described to us some minutes ago. Okay, so what we are going to talk this afternoon is we are trying to quantify this digital gap already exist in internet access and in FTTH service in Spain. Even Spain is a success case in the development of these services. There is still a digital gap, a rural gap. We are going to quantify using the data provided by Medux. Okay, so we will look at the coverage gap. We will identify also a performance gap, which is can be disturbing, okay, but there is a gap, and we are going to quantify, and we will identify one of the root causes of this gap, which is technology adoption. Okay, so if we go to coverage, we can see, okay, we can see now the coverage percentage by geotype, by type of municipality. Okay, on the right we have the penetration coverage curves published by one of the Spanish regulator, the ministry in this case, talking about 92% of total coverage and 80% of rural coverage. If we look a little bit inside these figures, we can see which in urban areas coverage is almost total with 97%, almost total. And then if we go to the other side of the picture, rural municipalities, small municipalities with low density are about 76% of coverage. So this is the range we identify for this gap. Okay, so there is a real gap. It's not huge, it's closing, but it's still a real gap on this on coverage. So what are the factors impacting in this gap? We have identified and quantified one of them at least. Okay, so in the next slide. Okay, we have with the Medux data, we have the number of operators present in every single municipality. So we are trying to see if this have some impact, some correlation with coverage, and in fact it does. Okay, so the more active operators in a municipality, the more coverage you can find as a general rule, of course, in this municipality. And this is true both in urban areas. Okay, we are talking always of very high values in urban areas, but that you can see if there is present more of 5 operator, we are in a 94 coverage value. It's very clear the impact in rural areas. If you have 5 or more operators active present in a municipality, in a rural municipality, you will have a coverage about 85%, which is a high value. Okay, so there is a correlation between the number of active operators and the coverage in every municipality. And this is possible, as Hugo mentioned, mainly because the existence of this wholesale sophisticated ecosystem, okay, allowing many operators to share infrastructure. Okay, talking about another point helping Spain to close this coverage gap, we can also talk about the public grants, public subvention program, which is called Único Banda Ancha, which is focused on bringing internet access, in fact, fiber coverage to municipalities where another way of developing will be impossible. Okay, So the program has been running for 5 years. This 24 was the last one, and the number of building units developed in this program is very far to 2 million. Okay, so you can see also in the map the coverage by municipality level, and you can see there is still some not so dark areas, okay, pointing to the points where still remain deployment to be done, even with the presence of this public grants Único program. Okay. So we have focus on coverage. We are going to start to talk to performance. Okay. Okay, we have identified a clear gap in performance in between urban and rural areas. If we look at download speed using median, you can see there is a 15% gap between urban and rural areas, which is quite consistent. If you take this figure for the 90% percentile, the gap is even a little bit bigger. So it's not huge, but there is some kind of gap in performance, even not just coverage, but also in performance between urban and rural areas, at least in Spain. So this is important. We have look at also to latency and packet loss. The results are consistent with latency. We have bigger latency in rural areas versus urban areas, but there is no clear trend in packet loss. Okay, packet loss is always very low, and in general are very good networks in any geotype you develop. Okay, so remind this, there is also a gap in performance, not just in coverage. It's not a huge gap, but exists some gap. Okay, and now we can think about the root causes for this gap. There is a mix of causes, okay, but we have identified one which is quite relevant. Okay, maybe the causes can focus on limitation on deployment, the commercial speed, the customer contract, the backhaul networks, a long list of causes. In fact, you can see here the map of Spain identifying how clearly urban areas have a bigger average speed than rural areas. You can see clearly in this map. But we have identified a specific causes which is related with the technological adoption of the customer premise equipment, the CPE, in rural areas. Okay, so we have some data in the next slide. Okay, so you can see here the distribution of type of Wi-Fi interfaces for type of municipality, and you can see as in rural areas the presence of obsolete Wi-Fi 4 equipment almost doubles, is per 2 the presence of such equipment in urban areas, and we can find this had a real impact in the download speed we have already identified. In fact, you can see also for the other view the even using the same Wi-Fi interface, there is also a difference between local and rural areas. But for this big analysis, the main impact is related with the preeminence of obsolete Wi-Fi 4 equipment in rural areas. Okay, I'm thinking this is almost all I will have to tell you this afternoon about quantifying this rural gap. Okay, so we have some conclusions, and I will let the floor to Hugo to give to you.
Okay, thank you, Joaquin. Vincent, I'll just jump very quickly to the conclusions, and then I'll let you for the questions. Okay,
Okay, sure.
Basically,
I just came back on screen because we're running out of time.
Okay, I'll be very fast. No, so I mean, as we've all been mentioning, again at the end of the conclusion, we have highlighted 5 different key conclusions. Basically, Spain as a data shows we are world leader and European leader in terms of coverage and also in terms of adoption, penetration rates. Okay, we have, and I think I've remarked it several times, a very mature, complex, spidery web type wholesale model. Okay, all the different players in the telco ecosystem have a very important role, and they all connect with everybody in different ways. Okay, so that is one of the most important things that we have in Spain, and which has allowed us to have these very good KPIs. Regarding the results and analysis between the gap and the digital gap between urban and rural areas, we see that in coverage there is a gap. Okay, it is a small gap compared to other European and worldwide countries, but there is still a gap which needs to be addressed by the different both public and private telecom players. Okay, there is also a gap in performance. Okay, at the end we've seen that performance, download speed, and latency are better in urban areas, than they are in rural ones. Okay, this is something that also needs to be addressed. And last but not least, at the end, the message that we transmitted to the different players in Spain, but we also would like to transmit it here into all of our European colleagues, is at the end this needs to be a continuous improvement process. Okay, we all need to work hand in hand in order to close this gap, to have very resilient and national, let's say national universal ultra high speed broadband solutions. Okay, in order to close the digital gap, just 4 points, I will go very quickly. Basically, we ask for collaboration, okay, between different public and private stakeholders. Access needs to be affordable. Okay, we know that deployment costs are not the same in urban and rural areas, but for the final user, the deployment and the access needs to be affordable. We need to innovate in technology, okay, in order to provide a better service, and also bearing in mind in the times that we live that all of this needs to be sustainable, okay, and needs to be compliant with all the different ESG regulations that we are surrounded by. Okay, so with this we finish. Thank you very much for all, and Vincent, I'll leave you for the questions.
Thank you, Hugo. And I think you will leave the call with some homework because I've been overwhelmed by the number of questions we received. And with 7 minutes left, it's going to be difficult to take all of them. So I'll try and summarize and maybe highlight a few points to you for reaction. What I'm reading across the board is there is question around the pros and cons of overbuilt. Is it inefficient? Is it a waste of money? Is it creating confusion? Or is it the best way to ensure high level of coverage and penetration? And what is your view on the two sides of overbuilt? Connected to that is what has been the role of regulation in managing that evolution of network deployment and adoption during the last maybe 10 years in Spain. And also there are a lot of technical questions regarding how overbuilt is and open access is managed. Is there a kind of organized way to manage cooperation maybe a platform to manage cooperation between all stakeholders and how such a diversified situation is managed. And the last question is, what about consolidation? So a lot of these questions are around that theme. I prefer to ask you all these points. I don't have the time to go through the 25 questions I've got in front of me. So these are the key points I could highlight. If you want to, maybe let's go across the table and you pick up 1, 2, or 3, depending on what you prefer, within the last 6 minutes we have left.
Okay. I'll start. Okay, if you want, I will tackle the first one regarding if overbuild has been positive or negatively seen. Okay, obviously here, depending if you're a final end user, or you're a financial institutions, maybe your answer will be different. But at the end, what we've seen, and it's been clearly shown in the graphs, is that in those areas where there are more than 2, 3, 4 network competing, broadband coverage are higher. Okay, and that's the data. The data shows that. Okay, so from a user perspective, you can say that having a network overbuild has provided benefits in terms of coverage. Okay, at the end, competition drives better performance. Okay, but sometimes we do not need to extend this to, let's say, to the limit. No, there has to be some responsibility. Okay, because at the end, networks needs to be affordable, because at the end we are all part of this telecom industry. Okay, and we've seen that ARPU is not going down year on year, and telecom operators are still investing and still need to invest in better technology, better services. Okay, so there needs to be a solution. There needs to be an optimal point between providing good coverage and good service to end users, but also driving profitability for the telecom operators.
Yeah, I will add just one point there, Hugo, is in fact the market is right now trying to adjust itself this overbuild, which is maybe the prominent character of the Spanish market. Okay, so we are not in the final situation. Okay, we have high overbuild figures, but it's quite different. And it's quite different to be in a main city, which you for sure will have 3 or 4 networks in your house, to be in a small rural country, which maybe you have just one. Okay, as the Unico program is subsiding. Okay, so but the main parts of the movements in the market here in Spain are in fact a response in trying to adapt to this overbuild figures. I will say. So we will see where we are going with that. Okay.
Alvaro, any comment from your side?
From my side, and just to remark what Hugo said, that more networks at the end provide more competition, provide more or provide better performance for the final user. And as the data shown, in those places where we have more than 5 or 4 networks, the figures on not only in the speed and performance, also in other KPIs we have on the solution, that web browsing, streaming, and other online gaming, is just better performance for the final users. I'm on the side of the quality of experience measurement. I'm not on the side of the telecom operator or a financing company that has to have a green figures. For us, as we saw, more competition put more pressure on the operators and put better, let's say, commercial packages and commercial services for the users.
And there was also a remark coming from Germany regarding the condition, the technical conditions to roll out network. Indeed, a lot of aerial network facade deployment is making the cost of deployment much more affordable compared, say, to practices in Germany, and therefore overbuilding is proportionally less a financial difficulty than if you have a cost of deployment which can be 3-4 times higher. So I think that technical element that you have, and which is specific to the market in Spain, is also quite important when you look at it from the perspective of investors.
Yeah. It's absolutely that is, Vincent. Yeah, for sure. As Hugo mentioned, the cost of deployment in Spain is lower for sure than in Germany or even France. Okay, and this is related with this technical aspect, and also the availability of uh, uh, passive part of the network, ducts and poles are at regulated prices, okay, which
Yeah.
relates
So
with.
Joachim, we will need to conclude there. I like to to give
Okay,
to go to let everyone go to the next call without overlapping too much. I would like to thank you very much. A lot of comments
thank
included
you.
in the question refer to the quality of your presentation and of this session. So thank you very much for your contribution. I would like to thank the audience for being here so many and for sending so many questions. Question will be answered afterwards. Unfortunately, too much to say on the call to cover all questions. Maybe the next slide, please, just as an information about our next webinar in February. If you can move to the next slide, it will be about signal quality and performance monitoring in FTTH networks. Will take place in February, and all of you will receive notification in due time. Thank you so much for your attention. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you so
Bye
much.
bye.